Those three things were hard coded inside of me. I just allowed them to really come up. Where I was emotionally probably weak or emotionally scarred was being told by the school system that I wasn't smart, that I didn't try hard enough, that I didn't focus, that I didn't apply myself. And I realized that I didn't have to do any of those things. If I only did the three things that I was so good at and loved to do, I could delegate everything except genius. I could hire people to do the stuff.
Welcome to the show. Make sure you share this one. We've got a great show as always, but today we got someone sort of famous. We got Cameron Herold from COO Alliance, from Back Pocket COO, famous international speaker, and all around generous and great guy on the show, talking about how he did and how you can develop your personal skill portfolio, how to discover what you love and are good at, your unique ability. And he's going to give you just a blueprint for a great life. He's got one. He's living it on his own terms, and you can figure out how. Welcome to the show, and welcome to the Edge of Excellence. Well, Cameron Herold, it's been such a long time. You're going to find out some things that I remember about you that you taught me during this discussion, because you actually were a life changer to me one time when I saw you speak. It's been a long time. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Edge of Excellence.
Really great to see you again, Matt. I think it has it been since Vegas that we haven't seen each other?
I don't know, but I hear about you all the time because Brandon Ames comes to your house.
18 years ago.
I've had to have seen you since then.
Right?
I hear about you all the time because Brandon Ames comes to your house and tells me about it. Kearley, Blair Astley, Darius is in my forum. Jay Wong, I did a podcast with. He does our podcast, your podcast. So I've been running parallel. My cousin's coming from England tomorrow, and Cameron's living in London right now for a week. So yeah, I've been circling in your circle. And I need to get back and dig into your life and figure out how you became the mastermind of growth for all these different companies all over the world. You were COO of Got Junk and took it from 2 million to 100 million and made me famous in the process. And we're going to get into that. And then obviously you're the top rated speaker, even spoke in Antarctica. We're going to get into that. But before we do, I got to ask you, this is going to be a good one, I'm sure. What's your definition of excellence?
Wow. What's your definition of excellence? That's a great question. I don't know if I've ever truly pursued excellence per se. I think I've probably pursued momentum more than excellence. So maybe I'll flip my answer on this, but I believe in minimum viable everything. Get it done and out the door, because momentum creates momentum, and that momentum, that flywheel, is where the real impact comes from. I've never been excellent at anything. I've never been excellent at school, never been excellent at sport, but I think I've definitely achieved momentum where I'm more of exploring and experiencing and moving.
You were probably with me when I forget who it was from Apple. It's like the third hired, and he talked about, not Guy Kawasaki.
Guy Kawasaki. Yeah.
It was Guy Kawasaki. Okay.
Yeah. Guy Kawasaki. Yeah.
And he talked, no, Guy Kawasaki was Rich Dad Poor Dad. The other guy, Apple guy. Something like that.
It's Guy.
Yeah.
Guy Kawasaki guy. It's Robert Kiyosaki, and I think it is Guy Kawasaki.
Oh, okay.
Because he was told, he was at an event in the mid 80s, around 86 or 87, and Steve Jobs said, everyone in the room is a technical evangelist for Apple. So Guy went out and had business cards made up that said technical evangelist, and all of a sudden people started listening, and he just decided to kind of do what Steve told him to do. But anyway, what was your point about him?
He said that they shipped it before it worked. So get it out there, get the momentum out there, let 1,000 flowers grow.
Going. I mean, look, you and I both started our business careers in the same industry, painting houses. And had I been ready to paint houses to start my house painting business, I never would have started. I didn't know anything about house painting. I bought a franchise. I hired somebody who knew how to paint. He trained my people for me. I still can't paint a house very well. Right. So we can go into a little bit of that. But had I waited for excellence in house painting, I never would have built a business.
Okay.
But I had to be good enough.
All right, we're going to change the name of the podcast to the Edge of Momentum. Well, let's go back and figure out. You've been called the greatest speaker of all time by the publisher of Forbes magazine. You've written 6 books.
Seven.
You are seven. You are the greatest publicist I've ever met. And by the way, if you want to find Cameron, he's got CameronHerold.com. He's got the Second in Command podcast. But what was it like? And let me guess where you were from. I'm going to just guess Sudbury. I don't know why.
Sudbury, Canada. We're a mutual friend of ours, Mark Moses. We went to grade school together in Sudbury, Canada. We did a speaking competition in grade 2, and then played tennis together. Yeah, so I grew up in Sudbury, Canada.
And did you know my business partner, Jason Reed from Sudbury, also way more important, influential than Mark Moses from Sudbury?
I do know Jay, and I met him later in life, but I never knew him in Sudbury, and I don't think I ever knew that he was from Sudbury. I just knew Jay through. So did he and Mark know each other then from grade school?
Yeah.
Or from high school?
Yeah, something like that.
Wow, crazy. They went to LaSalle and I went to Churchill. So we were at neighboring kind of grade 7, grade 8 schools. And then anyway, we were in the same neighborhood for sure.
And what were you doing to prepare yourself to one day have your first business, a painting company, your second business got junk, and I don't know how many other businesses before you got to the COO Alliance?
1-800 Got Junk was the 4th company that I'd scaled. So I started with College Pro Painters. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad ran his own business, and then both sets of grandparents were entrepreneurs. So I really grew up in that world. And when I was 20, I was at university and saw a flyer on the floor that said earn $10,000 and run your own business. And that was 1985. And I was like, man, $10,000, that's a lot of money. I mean, $10,000 today is a lot of money for most students, but like to make in 4 months. But in those days, that was a ton of money. Like my tuition was probably $1,000 a year. Anyway, I decided to get involved and did it. My dad said, there's no better time in your life to go bankrupt. Let's try it and give it a shot. And I was so scared of failing that I did everything in the manual. If it said a yellow keychain, I had a yellow keychain.
Yeah.
But so we did College Pro. I ended up opening the West Coast of the United States for College Pro. Fun fact, I hired Kimball Musk to be a franchisee for me in 1993, Elon's younger brother, and also his cousin Peter Reeve, who built Solar City. I hired both of them in 93 in Toronto and opened up the West Coast of the US. But I left there and I joined as a partner in a collision repair chain. It's now called Boyd Auto Body in Canada. It's called Gerber Auto Collision in the United States. It's the largest collision repair chain in the world. It's about a $2 billion revenue company, publicly traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange for the last 30 years. And then I left there and I was hired as the president of a private currency business. We built that company up, took it public, and sold it in January of 2000. And we had 30,000 companies buying and selling using our digital currency instead of the US dollar. I can talk a little bit about that. Left that business and then joined Brian as his COO to build 1-800 Got Junk. And I went into the head office as employee number 14 when I left 6.5 years later with 3,100 employees system-wide. So, wow. And then I left there 19 years ago. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. And a couple other fun facts. Kimball Musk's son worked for College Works, not because College Pro went away. So he worked for us, showed up as right when Teslas were coming out, had a Tesla. Everybody thought it was
crazy.
Cool. And then
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Did you work with John Waldron? Did you know that guy?
I see Kimball every year at the TED conference and he keeps introducing me as his last boss. I'm like, that's the way to introduce me.
Well, John Waldron went on from that College Pro company to be president of Goldman Sachs, and he's my wife's cousin, coincidentally.
You know, there's a writer from Fortune magazine. His name is Justin Martin, and Justin has always wanted to write an article about people who started their business career in the house painting world and really excelled. Because I was telling him about some stories of some franchisees that worked for me in Washington that had $60-80 million exits. The Kimball story, the Peter Rive story, as you mentioned, like there's so many that have built really big careers. And I think running the house painting company was a real world MBA for all of us. I learned way more running the business than I ever did in university. Yeah. I remember this, I was in 3rd year university and I was taking an organizational behavior class and we were learning about interviewing and hiring people. And I kind of put my hand up, a small room, like maybe 80 people in the class. And the professor said yes. And I said, have you ever hired anybody? And he goes, no. Why, have you? I was actually asking to understand if what he was talking about was experiential or if it was theoretical. I just wanted to know where his ideas were coming from. So I wasn't challenging him at all. Yeah. And anyway, so he goes, why, have you ever hired anybody? And I said, yeah, I've hired 20 people to work for me. And he looked at me and then the whole class turned. I'm like, oh God, I've become the know-it-all. But I realized like I'd actually interviewed and hired 20 people by that point, or 22 people over the 2 summers. And I had more experiential skills at doing interviews and doing hiring and onboarding and developing people than this professor had. And he was teaching the class. That really flipped the switch for me that I was never going to be good in school. My brain didn't work that way, but I was really going to be good at learning from doing, from that kinesthetic experiential learning.
Yeah, get out there and get it done. Get it out the door, like you said. Everybody sits
Yeah.
there and does the theory. Go out and do it. Go out and
Yeah.
do an interview. See how the
Knock on
theory
doors.
works. Wow. So you're in Sudbury, and were you planning to be an entrepreneur? Because you said your family of entrepreneurs you were gonna be an entrepreneur. You went to college. Coincidentally,
Yeah.
College Pro came, and at College Pro, you actually had to buy the franchise. It wasn't like College Works where we give it to you.
No, we didn't have to buy it. We had to pay for a vehicle and we had to buy the equipment. We would buy the equipment from last year's manager typically, and then we would buy some new stuff. So I paid $1,900 for my van, and I paid about $1,000 for equipment, and I paid him out over the course of the summer. But we paid I think it was a 21% royalty. So we paid 15% royalty and then 6% that we could earn back, or something like that. And that paid for, their call center and some marketing and the paint store guarantee, but there was no upfront fee. So the royalty was fairly high, but we got a ton from it, right?
Yeah,
A ton from it.
All right. So you're high school, the equivalent of high school, thinking about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You go to college, you try out the entrepreneurship. After that, why did you jump in? Did you jump into a public company? Did you decide to go big and kind of come back down, or did it go public when you jumped in?
Yeah, it went public. So when I left College Pro Painters, I moved from Washington back up to Canada. In fact, I'd applied for a VP job with College Pro, and they gave it to Greg Clark, the founder's younger brother, Tim. And when they gave it to Tim Clark, I called Paul Heyman at the time and I said, patronage appointment, this is bullshit. I'm out, and resigned. I had been positioned to get the next VP job, had done extraordinarily well that year. And then they gave it to Tim, who hadn't worked for College Pro for 15 years. Good hire, but anyway, so I bounced, and a friend of the family called me up and said that he was starting an auto body collision repair chain. He had 7 corporate locations and he wanted to franchise that. Would I come on as a partner in the business and franchise it? So we started it up. We did, I think, around 20 locations in British Columbia, some in Alberta, and then a bunch in Ontario. And then in October of 98, Terry decided to take the company public and use the public money to start doing acquisitions. So when the company went public, I left, we stopped franchising. He then started buying up all the franchisees. And then Gerber's now a couple hundred locations, largest collision repair chain in the world. I didn't want to really be involved in a public company. I'm not a corporate person at all.
Yeah.
So I left, and I was already an EO member back with that company. That was when I joined EO from 1994 till 98. And then I was hired as the president of a private currency business. There was a group out of Toronto that had a private currency. They wanted someone to run their Vancouver company. So I came in as the president of that LLC. We built it up, and then we sold it to a US public company, and then took that company public at a bigger level. So yeah, I was a part of that. We ended up with 900 employees, fast growing, tech company. And it was fun, but again, I was outside of my area, my unique ability area.
So you were picking up skills, marketing skills, sales skills, management skills, hiring people skills, then how to roll out franchises skills, then how to deal with financing and sell and taking a company public skills, then realizing I'm not a public guy. I bet you didn't know you weren't a public guy until it was barreling down on you.
Yeah, I knew because in the room, I didn't feel like I fit. I was so used to being around the entrepreneurial, franchising, growth kind of culture, the tech culture. And then all of a sudden being in these boardrooms where people were talking about, Michael Porter's 5 forces and the cross-functional decision-making. And I was like, what the fuck we got to go with something. No, we can't just go with it because we got to ask 7 more people. And at College Pro Painters, we didn't have time to go ask a bunch of people. We only had 17 weeks to do 100% of our revenue, right? We had May 1 till August 31st to do 60 million in revenue. That was 35 years ago. We had to act quick. And inside of a bigger company, if you act quick, you piss people off, politics come in, you make expensive mistakes. So yeah, I had to kind of learn to start slowing that stuff down. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel natural. In fact, that's why I ended up having to leave 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Was Brian knew that I was the right guy, as he said, to go from 2 million to the 100 million. And I was the wrong guy to go from the 100 million to the billion. So Brian asked me to step down when we'd gotten to that 100 million mark. And it was totally the right decision. He wanted someone who was more precise, more detail oriented, someone who could slow down and take into consideration the people impact, the strategic impact, the cash impact. I was like, fuck, that sounds like a lot of thought process that I can't run off of my gut with.
Did he ever get to $1 billion, by the way?
He's at 900 million right now.
Uh,
Yeah,
I want to beat him to $1 billion. We're chasing $1 billion.
there you go.
I gotta get there. You know, it's hard to keep all those plates spinning, and the plates have been spinning perfectly, and then all of a sudden, usually there's one wobbling or three wobbling. Those
Well,
plates
the
started
hard
wobbling a
part-
little bit this year.
The hard part for you guys was never, I mean, it was always the crux of the business was how do you find really good franchisees every year? Because those franchisees end up leaving, right? They end up graduating and doing something else. You can't keep them for 10 or 20 years.
No,
And
we
this-
can. We
But
do.
Are you? Oh, you are now.
We start other businesses with them.
There you go. Okay, so that works. Yeah.
We have the fastest growing home improvement business in America for the last 3 years. We've got a big commercial construction company, all ex-College Works people, but
Oh, so
most of them. But College Works is still what College Works is. It's
Yeah.
it's
Well,
a
that's similar.
learning ground, and it's hard to grow College Works huge because you get new employees. It's a dumb business model. You get new employees every year, you get new customers, but we love it. We love it. And this podcast is about kind of figuring out people's path, and I want to just dive into a couple things.
I love the path that you're giving students to get their real world MBA, to run a business while they're in college. And then the best ones can actually move up into the organization or in other organizations. That is a great path as a career path for anybody entrepreneurial or anybody who is really kind of entrepreneurial, right? Like being in an entrepreneurial org.
And even though we're big, we don't have that bureaucracy. People get to get it out the door. People get to do that. People get to practice momentum, try new things. That Home Genius went from 1 million to 500 million in 6 years because they were getting it out the door. And it's not franchise; it's all owned employees. But I want to back up a little bit because you mentioned EO briefly. And do you know what incredible impact you made on me? What could it be that you did to me, or yeah, I'm just going to say it that way. Do you have any idea? Life-changing? You
It
remember?
might have been to talk. I remember doing a couple of talks back in those years about the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship with the highs and lows and how a lot of entrepreneurs think they're crazy, but they're not. They're just entrepreneurial. Was it that?
No. Do you remember you and Brian went out and became super famous all of a sudden, like when it was just a couple $1 million business?
It was the Vancouver GLC is when we first spoke to EO.
That's what it was. We went to Vancouver and you spoke about how to do marketing and how to do publicity. And I went crazy. I got every award you could ever win. I got every magazine, every newspaper, and became global chairman of EO, partially because of some of that success. Yeah, you guys had a talk, which was so kind of you as members of the organization to just come share your best practice. And it was standing room only. And I don't know how many people were there, maybe 200, but everybody walked away with free advertising for life. You said, why pay for the ads? Why take the ads? Get them to write an article. And then we did that for me until I realized I can't be in the newspaper anymore because it was about me instead of the company. And now I don't do that anymore.
Well, now you can get it about your franchisees. Imagine if College Works got press every summer about their franchisees.
We do.
That's where I learned how to get free PR was when I was at College Pro Painters. We were taught how to phone the newspaper and how to phone the TV station and what to say to them so they would give us a story. And they did. All of a sudden I was in the newspaper and I was on TV. I'm like, shit, it's that easy? Like,
and how great is that? How, like, you're a college student, you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you go out, try this entrepreneurship, and you leave 17 weeks later and you got news pieces about you online. You've got newspaper articles about you online. You got a little, I like to do podcasts with some of them too. Just kind of, I want that Google search to just be filled with cool stuff for them.
I made so much money that first summer that the girls that I was dating in university were going to some of the nicest restaurants in the city of Ottawa because I was rolling in cash. I was showing one of my kids a restaurant. He's like, you've been there? I'm like, yeah, I used to take girls there when I was 20 years old. It's like, how could you possibly afford that? I'm like, I don't know. I guess I made so much at College Pro that that was good.
When I was doing the sales season as an intern, I used all my money for marketers. I had just a little teeny bit of money and it was for food and books. And I spent it all on marketers. So I had no food and no books. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I learned the 2 hour block system because I had to check books out for 2 hours at a time. I learned I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I couldn't highlight them. I had to take notes. So it was awesome. I also learned that you could eat potatoes 3 times a day with butter in many different ways. And that's how I survived. And then I remember at the end of the summer, I'm sitting on the beach eating peel and eat shrimp. And I was drinking Natural Light. Now I'm drinking Bass Ale. I just remember going, wow, this is way better. And I bought a Maserati. That's what I did with all my money,
Whoa.
which was a really bad idea.
I bought a Honda Accord. I wasn't rolling in it as much as you were.
Yeah, the Maserati.
But I did potatoes, ground beef, and barbecue sauce a couple times, probably 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah. I couldn't afford the ground beef part of that. But why EO? Because you mentioned EO. I met you at EO. You did this nice thing to open your kimono and share your way of getting press in EO. Why is it important for someone listening right now? They're out there trying to build their skill portfolio and getting started on a path, hopefully like yours. They're trying to figure out where it feels natural and with a public company or the entrepreneurial business. Why do they need to do something like EO? Why did you do it?
For me, I actually did a video about 2 months ago of all of the mastermind communities that I've been in over the last 30 years. And it started with YEO. It used to be called YEO. Now it's EO, but it used
The good
to be
days, the good old days. Yeah.
organization, right? And we used to be kicked out at 40. Thankfully, they got rid of that age gap and they kept the entrepreneurs who are now, in their 40s and 50s. But I joined EO for 5 years. I was in Strategic Coach for 7 years. I was in Genius Network for 9 years, 5 years in Baby Bathwater, 5 years Mastermind Talks. The list goes on. But the first and most important mastermind for me was EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. I was in a forum group and I met with 8 to 10 other CEOs every single month for 4.5 years, where I could actually talk about where I was struggling in my business, talk about where I was struggling in my personal life, and get experience from others that were going through that same journey, that were running businesses. They weren't lawyers or doctors.
Yeah.
They didn't have jobs. They had companies and the same issues that I had. So they became a peer group and an instant kind of mentoring board of advisors. And it became a real safe place to be vulnerable and open. That was really my starting point. Second is I met Brian there. So Brian and I were in a forum together for 4.5 years. He watched me growing 2 companies, and he was my best man at my wedding before I even started to work with him. So we ended up meeting each other, and I saw him scaling what was called the Rubbish Boys. I helped him hire his first franchising expert, a guy named Paul Guy. I recruited Paul out of College Pro to go and work for Brian at the Rubbish Boys for 2 years. So I helped him get his first person. For me, EO has become a global network of friends now. I've spoken to EO chapters in 30 countries. I think I've spoken to EO chapters on all 6 continents. I've been paid to speak in Antarctica, but there's no chapter there. But I've done YPO in South America, but I've spoken to EO in 5 continents, 30 countries. So I have this great global network now of friends all over the world that I get to hang out with as I'm traveling.
Yeah, it is cool. I was in Vistage, I was in EO, I was in YPO, and when I did the Vistage and the YPO, I didn't do the global because I didn't want to dilute my EO friends around the world. I just stayed locally. But it is so cool. Like you're in London, and we didn't mention this. We go through the path of Cameron's life, but the end of the path is Cameron selling everything he has and traveling the world. And you've lived in 80 countries in the last 5 years. Is that what you said?
Yeah, let's not call it the end of the path. This is the middle of the path.
Middle of
I got a lot of years left to go here. Yeah, my wife and I 5 years ago sold our homes, sold our cars, sold our furniture, gave stuff away, and we have 2 carry-on suitcases each, and we've been exploring the world, country hopping pretty much every week or 10 days we've been moving. I've been to about 80 countries, some of them 7 or 8 times. Like I've been to Italy, I think 8 times in the last 5 years. And all we're doing is crossing off bucket list items, going to festivals, going to courses and events around the world. Most of the events we now go to are in Europe or the Middle East. And we're just trying to explore the world and be nomads and really, I guess, explore everything that's good that's out there.
So after the 4th company got junk and you left there when it was $106 million.
Correct. Yep.
What is that right when you started your COO coaching business?
Yes, I left 1-800 got junk and I took 4 months off. I didn't return an email, didn't return a phone call. I just decompressed. I hiked, I played golf, I spent time with my kids and journaled. And at the end of that 4-month period, I decided that I really loved to do 3 things and I was really maybe good at 3 things. I loved speaking, I loved coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs. And I loved going to these mastermind events and hanging out with really fun entrepreneurial people. Outside of that, I was good at some stuff, but I didn't like doing it. So I decided to build a business around those three things: speaking, coaching, and networking, basically. And so I started a company originally called the Back Pocket
Oh, I
COO.
remember. Yeah.
And yeah, my sales pitch was, you can't afford me, but you can't afford to not have me in your back pocket. And it was really a fractional COO thing before fractional COOs were a thing.
Mhm.
And so I started working with three companies that first year. Nurse Next Door was my first client. They had no franchises. They hadn't sold their first location. And then I worked with another company called Fairway Divorce, and then another one that was an EO out of Toronto called I Love Rewards that went on to sell for over 100 million. And I coached those three companies and then started doing more of the speaking. And I guess 4 years after that, I was asked to write my first book by a speakers bureau and kind of just went from there.
And so, was that the second to final business? Back Pocket CEO
Yeah, well,
became.
Back Pocket COO, and then now I run the COO Alliance. So I
Yeah.
started a mastermind community that's exclusively for the second in command.
Well,
So I saw all these entrepreneur groups like Vistage and Genius Network and YPO, et cetera, but there was nowhere for that COO to go. COOs were all showing up at these entrepreneur events, and it's kind of like you and I showing up at a baby shower.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good idea, but we don't fit. And COOs don't fit in a room filled with entrepreneurs, but they need their own community. They need a place to share their frustrations and their worries and their insecurities. They need a tribe of people that they can learn from that are also running the business for those entrepreneurs. So I started that organization up 10 years ago. We've got members from 17 countries, and we hold 2 in-person events a year, and we hold monthly events online.
I have someone for you. I was asked by a really good buddy of mine. I'm not going to say it on air, but remind me to connect you with this guy with the grocery store chains, because he's
Is he from Edmonton?
no, he's from down here in California.
Okay. It's a guy named Johnny Rad from Edmonton, another EOer from the Edmonton area.
Yeah.
Grocery stores.
So what you love and what you're good at, I call that your unique ability. You figured out these three things. Someone's listening right now. They're young. So maybe when you're super young, you can't really just pick the three things, but you can start your list of things.
But you know what? Maybe you can. Let me go back to grade school and high school. I loved coaching and helping people when I was in grade school and high school. I was on student government. I was on the sports council. I was the top cub. I was the top scout. I ran the pro shop at our golf club. And I was always training these younger people to do other stuff. I coached a ski team when I was 16 years old. So I had already been in that coaching, loved it. I've been doing speaking events, public speaking events, all through grade school and high school. I recorded around 10 radio ads for a company in Sudbury when I was in grade school and high school. So I'd already loved speaking. That was a natural thing for me. Speaking on student council, speaking in front of the school, the pep rallies, all that was speaking. And then networking. Well, I loved being in Cubs. I loved being in Scouts. I was an altar boy in the church. I was in a fraternity. Like, I was networking right from the get-go. I was a member of a golf club. So those three things were hard-coded inside of me. I just allowed them to really come up. Where I was emotionally probably weak or emotionally scarred was being told by the school system that I wasn't smart, that I didn't try hard enough, that I didn't focus, that I didn't apply myself. And I realized that I didn't have to do any of those things. If I only did the three things that I was so good at and loved to do, I could delegate everything except genius. I could hire people to do the stuff.
How did you discover that those were your three things? Did you sit under a tree and reflect? How can someone do what you did right now at 21 years old, driving their car, paying attention to the road, not to this, listening to us on 1.5 speed? What should they do?
Okay, I'll talk about what they should do, but first I want to say one other thing. When I built the house painting business and ran the house painting business those 3 summers as a franchisee, I think I've spent a total of 20 hours total painting anything.
Yeah.
I hate painting, frankly. I don't like getting dirty. The whole paintbrush used to feel hard in my hand. I didn't like it. So I just had other people do that stuff. And I think that's a skill that entrepreneurs get very good at, is delegating the stuff they don't like. We're allowed to. It's almost like we're allowed to cheat that we weren't allowed to do in school. So what was the question?
But how do you figure out what your three things are if you're 22 years old driving down the street right now?
For most students, when you're in that group, or even most adults, we tend to diminish the stuff that we're good at as, oh, that's no big deal.
Everybody's good at it. Yeah.
Everybody's good at that. It's no big deal to hit a ball, to hit home runs. It's no big deal to spike like I do on the volleyball court. It's no big deal to play tennis with both hands. It's no big deal to be able to water ski like I do. No, it is actually a really big deal. That's your unique ability, right? If you've been leading kids while you've been a student, if you were the kid who always called all their friends together to go play whatever, you're in a leadership role much younger than you think. So yeah, it's going to be the stuff that you tend to dismiss as that's no big deal.
So what are you good at? That's no big deal. Make a list of those things, stare at the list, put it away for a few days, come back and stare at the list, and you'll start to hone in. Go ahead.
And sorry, and EO really helped me with that, because when I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I journaled every day for about 3.5 months. I just about 15 or 20 minutes a day. And I made lists of stuff that I sucked at. I made lists of stuff that I was good at. I made lists of stuff that I loved to do. I made lists of stuff I didn't like to do. And I kept adding to those lists. I did lifelines of my entire journey as an adult and where I struggled at each of those stages and where I excelled at each of those stages. I made lists of where I'd been in flow in my life, although I didn't call it being in flow at the time, but I said lists of things that were just easy to me or came easy or I loved doing, didn't seem like work. That was kind of being in flow. I made lists of every business area that had ever reported to me and all the projects that I could remember overseeing in those business areas. And kind of from that, I distilled down to the stuff that I was good at and loved to do.
Yeah, Warren Rustad says you should read, write, and think every day. And so you were practicing the reading, right? Well, at least the writing and thinking every day. It's not a go sit under a tree. It's not a pull over your car right now. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery is what you're saying.
And Warren Rustad is easily one of the top 3 speakers I've ever seen. Every time I go to see Warren speak, I walk in thinking like I've got my life under control. And I walk out the door going, wow, I got so much to improve again. I just saw him in Sydney last year. I was in Sydney at the same time and got to see him speak to the EO Sydney chapter.
Yeah, I would say that Warren Rustad is the most respected speaker I've ever heard.
He's extraordinary.
Like Steve Kearley talks. Everybody I know that has met him, hangs out with him, or seen him speak, all talk about the impact. So if you're listening right now and you haven't seen Warren Rustad, go find his books and hit the videos on him. He's super solid. Just real quick on the skiing. I just want to verify something real quick. You're good friends with Brandon Ames, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever been skiing with him?
No.
Okay, I just want to let you know he sucks at skiing. He's going to tell you he's good at skiing. He is no good at skiing. And I'll just do a little shout out to Brandon Ames, because I bet you Brandon Ames listens to this episode. I bet you Steve Kearley listens to this episode. Brandon, you suck at skiing. And by the way,
not going skiing with Brandon. I went to, by the way, have you been to Val Gardena in Italy?
No.
Put Val Gardena very high on your list. It's unbelievably extraordinary, great skiing, the whole area of Val Gardena around the Stella Ronda is incredible to ski.
I've only skied in Europe once, and I think you were probably with me when we went to that Palace Hotel in San Moritz, Switzerland.
No, I wasn't on that one, but that's got to be on my list. Yeah.
Palace Hotel, by the way, I mean, at this time, it was 20 years ago, they charged $45 for a water.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Whoa, it was, they have these different hotels are the best hotel in the world. So it was the best hotel. It's sister hotel to Villa d'Este.
Okay, I'll get my CO Alliance sold and then I'll go there for a bottle of water.
Yeah, you have to.
I went on a ski trip this year with Dan Martell and his crew. There were 48 of us went cat skiing together in the Bugaboos. Holy moly, that crew can shred. Dan does backflips on his snowboard.
Off of the rocks?
Off anything. Yeah, it's just nuts.
I retired from backcountry skiing. I went to the Selkirk Mountains every year for 10 years. Unfortunately, I got caught in 2 different avalanches, and really unfortunately, my best friend got killed in a tree well. And so I came home, and my wife just sat there and dealt with it every year. I had to go talk to this minister before I go. If something goes wrong, you got to be the person that does my funeral. And then finally, I came to my wife and I said, I also was hospitalized 3 times in 1 year. 2 from mountain biking accidents. 1, well, not hospitalized. I had to go to the hospital. 1 breaking my arm in a ski area. So I was flying home from New York in that blizzard. I got stuck in that blizzard a few months ago, and I'm flying home, and I just pop up. Oh, I was watching this movie. I choose to watch this movie about backcountry skiing, and everybody in the movie dies. And like they always do. All the mountain climbers always die, the
Yeah.
backcountry skiers. And I just popped over the seat and looked at Jill and I go, I'm not going to Retallick this year. I'm retired. And she goes, I knew that was going to happen. And I just, I'm done. I don't go first on a mountain bike anymore. I always go second. I'm retired with backcountry skiing, but I'm about to live my dream because yesterday, my 1-year rental in Park City, Utah started. And so now I live in California and Utah. So I'm going to chase. I don't have the dream to go in 80 places in 50 years, but I have a dream to live overseas for 6 months. And I have a dream to have a place in Park City. But I got,
Well, I'll tell you, while you're in Park City, I want you to go ski one of the mountains nearby. That's one of my favorites of all time. Have you skied Powder Mountain in Eden?
I never have, but I met those guys back in the EO days, and I have a lot of friends that have houses at Powder Mountain, so I will.
Okay. We know the same people then, Gary Nolan and Mike Geary. And
when I started off with that, I thought they called me up. I think I was chairman of EO, and they're like, they have this idea, and I'm like, it's a dumb idea. I'm like, and by the way, if you're listening and you want to be an entrepreneur like Cameron and I, you got to ignore the people that say dumb idea. And then they did that boat. And one of my friends, this guy, Johnny Schilleriff, that started Element Skateboards, was a speaker on the boat. And he told me he was sitting on the beach, and I forget who he was sitting with, but like Jay-Z and like, I don't know if it was Jay-Z, but like crazy famous people, that those two kids talked into jumping on a boat for free and speaking to a bunch of, and then they opened a ski area. The Powder Mountain story is a good story, but I got to ask you 2 more questions. You did something when you were young in your 20s that at the time seemed like a real sacrifice. And looking back, you didn't want to do it, but you did it. Looking back, it was one of the greatest things that you'd ever did. What was that sacrifice that you never regret?
Oh, it was College Pro Painters for sure. It was, I was talking to my 23-year-old just a week ago about this. He's already running his own business. I said, one of the lessons I got in my College Pro days was I put too much focus on the business over everything else. And I think I could have done both. I was so serious and I was so focused on the business that I forgot to have fun. I forgot to play with my friends. 5 of my friends moved from Ottawa to Sudbury to work for me that summer. They moved 5 hours away to a city they'd never been to before. And I don't remember more than once or twice playing basketball or going hiking or hanging out and having beers with them. All I remember is delivering paint to them in the morning and at the end of the summer saying, thanks for your help. And I think that kind of sucks. And so I don't regret the working hard. I don't regret pouring myself in, but I regret forgetting to keep important what's important, which is your friends and your family and your hobbies, because the death rate is still 100%. None of us are getting out of this alive.
Yeah, and there's balance, right? Most college students, all they do is their friends. And some college students, all they do is work, but you got to find the balance. You gotta take a break. Like oh, by the way, guess how much they make now? You said you made 10 grand. Guess how much the highest paid college works intern will make? Intern too. He's running a branch, not a district manager.
My guess is that the average probably makes about 80 and the highest is about 200.
Earns themselves?
Yeah.
Okay, the highest is about what? Wow, I wouldn't. That's way higher than I thought you would say. The highest earns about 175, but the average is about 23 grand. Believe it or not.
Well, that's still pretty freaking high. I mean, like, yeah, it's still pretty high. I mean, tuition.
I wish the average was 80 grand. I need more of these guys that make 175.
Yeah, I maybe I was off on what the average was. The only ones that I ever talk to nowadays are the ones who were hyper successful that became VPs and kind of excelled. So I was probably talking to the top quartile anyway.
I made 14 and it was the most anybody made that year back in 1993. Okay, so that's your regret. And then did you think you were going to be this successful? Did you think you'd have 7 best-selling books? Did you think you'd be flying all up? I mean, was this part of when you wanted to be an entrepreneur, did you see yourself 80 countries in 5 years? Did you see yourself like you're kind of famous? I mean, people know who you are. Like I say your name to somebody, they know who you are. Did you?
You know what's really funny? I got a message this morning on Instagram, and it was from a woman named Bonnie Hatswell who worked for me 20 years ago, and she said, "Were you biking through Hyde Park in London this morning?"
She saw you.
She and her husband spotted me on. I'm like, how do you recognize me when I'm?
You look exactly the same, dude. I'm kind of pissed off. Look at my head compared to your head.
You look great.
My face is twice as big as your face. I'm still. They used to call me at EO. They used to call me El Tomate. Can you tell why?
Yeah,
Like all the
birthdays,
Latin
yeah.
Americans, my name was El Tomate. I'm red. My hands were red.
That's what it
So
is.
you had no idea. You had no idea.
No, no, I didn't, and I still don't. I still have that kind of that childhood Canadian kid from Sudbury feeling. But I'm not trying to go anywhere anymore either. I remember when my mom passed away 20 years ago that I felt like I'd already made it. I was getting successful in a career. I had a wife, I had a child, I had a home, and I kind of felt like I was like, wow, I've made it. And I think for the last 20 years, I felt like I've been living on bonus time that
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. I do life planning and goal setting with all the district managers one-on-one every month. And it's kind of hypocritical because I have to come up with new goals because I've accomplished every one of my goals. And then I sit there and go, why do I need to have new goals? Why can't I just be satisfied? And there's this competition between like, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. Go, 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 get it out the door. Momentum,
Yeah,
momentum, momentum. When do we get to
I've
go,
stopped.
this is,
I've actually stopped on the goals. I drive towards a vivid vision of what we're building,
yeah.
but what I'm way more focused on now at 60 is bucket list. I have an in writing bucket list that I share with everybody. I'll share it with you if you want it, but
Yeah.
it's got 100+ things on it that I'm still trying to drive to and experience and try and learn and see. Tomorrow I get to cross one off. I'm going to Wimbledon for the first time.
Wow.
In 3 weeks I'm going to Georgia, so I get to go to Georgia for the first time, the country off in Eastern Europe. So I get 2 bucket list items this month. I'm more excited about experiencing stuff right now than building towards it.
Yeah.
I don't know what shifted, but
I think there's something about entrepreneurs that they go, 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 that they just can never stop. The horizon, the goals, like the horizon, that you never get there. And every once in a while, like you said, you need to take a break and hang out with your buddies and drink some beers when you're doing the college works thing. You need to stop and smell the roses and go to Georgia and go to the Spain game that I'm going to in a few minutes and not work that day.
Yeah. I think I must have learned that lesson then from that really hard time at 20. I guess that lesson has really internalized with me because I don't want to compromise that anymore. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to spend time with my friends. I had breakfast this morning with a friend that I met 24 years ago who lives in London. He's an entrepreneur. In fact, he actually built a business called AnyJunk, modeled after the 1-800-GOT-JUNK system, and he flew to Vancouver to meet us. Long story, but anyway, like I like spending time with people more than I like driving towards any other, goal that I've set for myself in business.
Well, you figured out who you were, you figured out who you are now, you figured out where you think you're going to be later, and you made some time to come on our show with the guy that started the competing business to the one that you were in. So thank you for making time, sharing the story. Shout out to Steve Kearley, Brandon Ames, Blair Astley, Darius. Can't even say his last name. It's so weird. Mike Cato. They all say hi.
Cato.
Yeah, and I'm sure you talk to most of those people as much as me. I really appreciate you coming on the Edge of Excellence today and sharing your wisdom, Cameron.
Matt, you're so welcome, man. Really, really appreciate it. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you.